Yeah, welcome along. Really lovely to see you all. Great to be part of this international online Sangha Day, the Festival of Light. So I'm coming to you live from the Dublin Buddhist Centre, right in the centre of Dublin in Ireland. And yeah, I'd just like to firstly just to say thanks to the Adhisthana Sangha for the previous session. I caught little bits in and out, but lovely to see you at that wonderful place. And just to say, with that session and any of the sessions today, you can catch them on YouTube. They're all being recorded on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch them later on if you want to. So this is the 8th session in Sri Ratna's first ever worldwide celebration of Sangha Day. So our New Zealand Sangha began the day this morning, their time, which is late last night, UK and Ireland time. And we're going to conclude our celebrations in California in the United States on the West Coast at 1 a.m. Well, that's our time, 1 a.m. in the UK and Ireland. And as I was saying, there is translation into German and Portuguese. So you can find the translation by clicking on the interpretation button at the bottom of the screen. There's a globe, a kind of a circle. So you'll be able to find the translation there. So basically, yeah, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be interviewing the 3 order members that you can see on your screen. I'll introduce them a little bit more fully later on, Chandraprabha, Manjupriya and Sanganath. And after that, in about 45 minutes time, 50 minutes time, there'll be an opportunity to meet random members of your Buddhist community from around the world. There'll be an opportunity to go into breakout rooms after this. So today is Sangha Day, and because we're doing this online, we can really highlight the international character of our Buddhist community. And really, this is quite an unusual feature of our Buddhist community, that it is international, that we do have people committed to the 3 jewels, practicing away all over the world, all different cultures. Not all the cultures in the world, but many of them. But many cultures. And for me, the image for this was sitting beneath the Bodhi tree on an order convention a few years ago and seeing just the various nature of our community, all the different people from all over the world, all sitting there beneath the Bodhi tree. And it really gave me a sense of a particularly unique character of our Buddhist community. And this is not just, actually, and one of the other things is that I've noticed, actually looking at the events over the course of the day, I've seen friends in different parts of the world, and I've just become really conscious of how many people are practicing in an environment that is different from the environment where they originated. So I've seen friends in New Zealand who are from England. I've seen friends in New Zealand who've lived in the UK. I've just seen people, people who've lived and practiced in different parts of the world, and who are doing that now or who have done that in the past. And what I wanted to highlight in these interviews is the fact that that's not just an expedient. It's not just that we're doing that because we want to practice in a different country because of what's available there. This is also an opportunity to grow in the Dharma. It's an opportunity for growth and development, to be living and practicing and being conscious about that in a place that's different from the place where you came from. So I remember a conversation I had with an order member called Buddhadasa, who some of you will know. Buddhadasa, incidentally, I think he started 7 or 8 Triratna Buddhist centers in his long life in the order. And he was part of the team that went to Australia in the early 1980s. And I noticed a lovely shot of him earlier on one of the videos of him with another friend of Manju, Siddha. And I was talking about this with him years ago, and Buddhadasa quoted this Tibetan saying, which is, "By abandoning one's fatherland, half of the Dharma is accomplished." By abandoning one's fatherland, half of the Dharma is accomplished. So I don't know whether that's literally true, but there's certainly some truth in it, I'm sure. And I also found that quote some years ago. In fact, it's the only reference I've seen to it in a book. It was a quote in a book about Chatrul Rinpoche, one of Bhante Sangharakshita's teachers, quoting Dudjom Rinpoche, one of Bante's other teachers. And Chökyi Rinpoche himself was always on the move. He was always leaving where he was and moving somewhere else. And of course, he lived the latter part of his life, I believe, in Nepal, away from his country of origin. So yeah, so I did that myself. I left New Zealand, which is where I'm from, in 1999. I wanted to deepen my going for refuge and join the order. And so I left New Zealand and went to England. And then a few years later, I went from England, and I'm now living in Ireland. And I often think that leaving New Zealand was one of the best things I ever did, and leaving the UK was one of the best things I ever did. Not that there's anything wrong with New Zealand and England. They're both wonderful places, and I really appreciated the time I had in those places. But I really feel that it's been really beneficial for me. But I'm not going to talk so much about myself. What I'm going to be doing is talking to these 3 order members who are here with us. So we have Manju Priya, who is from Ireland. He's now living in Brazil. So you should be able to see him on your screen. I'm going to be talking to Chandra Prabha, who's from Ireland and is living in England. And I'm going to be talking to Sanganath, who's from India and living in England also. So firstly, without further ado, I want to go and talk to you, Manju Priya. So yeah, like I was saying, Manju Priya is from Ireland. He's actually from Dublin, and he's actually from a place not too far from where I'm sitting right this moment. And he got involved in what was then the Dublin Meditation Centre in the early 90s. He worked in the centre for a number of years. He lived in a men's community. And in 93, he asked for ordination. And 98, he moved to the UK, and he lived for a time and worked at Pamaloka, our retreat centre for men, where men train and prepare for a life in the order. And then he himself was ordained in 1999. And in 2002, he moved to Brazil. And yeah, you'll get to meet Manju Priya in a minute. He's got so many qualities, but he is a man who loves to connect with people. He's got a very, very infectious character. He kind of infects you with his enthusiasm and zest for life. So I'm really looking forward to talking to you. And maybe you could start by telling us, Manju Priya, what made you want to move to Brazil?
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And just to let you know, thank you for the generous introduction, Yanadara. And I saw the moon last night, just to let you know. The same moon that you probably saw. And I thought about everybody who's going to be involved here today, just seeing the moon. And it's great to be here. Really good. And the question is it's a simple question because it can be answered very simply. Why did I move to Brazil? I fell in love with a Brazilian. So I was living in Pamaloka at the time, so it was quite embarrassing from the point of view of me being fully committed there. And then having a U-turn, as it were. So, however, that's the answer.
Yeah. But what's interesting is now I understand the relationship didn't last in the way that you'd hoped it would, but you didn't come home. You decided to stay. So that's quite a thing. So why did you decide to stay in Brazil?
Well, I mean, I felt
that attracted you.
Yeah, well, I did fall in love with my ex-wife Maya, and that did manage to get me to move from one continent to another. However, I fell in love with Brazil very, very quickly. And I mean, the thing is, it is actually true. Like, the Dharma is my main lover. So, my first weekend when I was here was a retreat. So I went from Pamaloka, spent a few days in Brazil when I finally moved to Brazil, and then I went on retreat. So that's been kind of like the story of my life here.
So it's important, isn't it, to note that there was already a Triratna presence in Sao Paulo. Was it Sao Paulo?
Yeah, in Sao Paulo. I'm kind of like second wave because it's Mokshananda who's responsible for all of this. So if there's anybody to blame, get in contact with Mokshananda. And that's a joke. And then there was Paramachita as well who came here. So I just basically came to continue the work that had already started. There was Marcia, who is a Mitra, and Sangadarshan, who was Zomar, who was ordained and died about 6 years ago, 93 years old. So I came, and there was already something started, which was an extra attraction.
Yeah. And how was it? I mean, how did you find just kind of meeting people and interacting with people from a different culture? What did you notice? What was it like?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, the Brazilians are amazing hosts. They really are. I mean, I think that actually is the main characteristic of the country. They're really good hosts. So nobody criticized me for my bad Portuguese or anything like that. I think 3 people in the 18 years have criticized my Portuguese. And one of them was about 5 years old, and he had good reason. And that's true. That's absolutely true. So they're very hospitable people, and I think that's a big factor in me. That was a big characteristic, or it was a big realization when I came, that I was in a culture where people judged much less on appearance than they do in Europe. You know, and the Brazilians are very interested. The Brazilians here are very interested in what's happening in the rest of the world. And I think actually they just really like to have people visiting from outside and taking interest. So it was a very easy marriage between myself and the culture.
And did you notice other contrasts between the culture in Brazil and the culture in Europe in terms of the way people think, the way people interact?
Yeah, there's many subtle differences, because on the surface it looks pretty much the same. But I think actually anybody who spends time here will notice, especially if they've come from a European or a North American background, that this is an emerging culture. And so it was, and it still is even today, very exciting for me to be a part of a group of people, a nation that feels that there's still something to be realized, or to something is yet to come here. Whereas in Europe, there's I love Europe. I go back to Europe. However, there's a characteristic of, well, we've already done it. And then with that, there's a little bit of a tendency to complain when actually you have everything, materially. Whereas here, there is more of a sense of, well, it's yet to come. And I really like that atmosphere.
And how does that impact on the way people approach the Three Jewels and the way people come into a relationship with the Three Jewels?
I've never really connected that with people coming along. However, now that you say it, I would say that if I relate to Brazilians based on their potential, the individual potential, the Brazilians, like anybody, will respond favorably. I think. However, maybe it is a little bit more fresh, because the culture is an emerging culture. I mean, one thing about the Buddha that I've realized here is that Sanganath will know this, is the Buddha, one of his characteristics is he never gave up on the potential of the Indians. He just never ever gave up on that. He just related to people on what they were in their essence. And I think that here, in my interactions with Brazilians, I see that that's my responsibility. So a lot has to do with, it's a kind of a co-creation. It's kind of, there's the culture, but there's also the way I relate to the culture that makes the magic.
Yeah. So it sounds in a way that what you're talking about is a universal thing that I suppose anybody anywhere who's trying to build a sangha would be trying to bring that about, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So well, I hope so.
Yeah. I guess what I'm pointing to is that, within difference, you also notice universality, don't you? You notice the things that are different, and also the things which are just human things. They're not
Yeah.
about being from, Brazil or Ireland or India or anywhere, but they're just, the human need to respond to something and have some way of working that out in one's
Yes.
life. Yeah.
Yes, I've come up with some of the obstacles have been cultural obstacles here, like people saying, "Oh, that won't work in Brazil,"
Uh,
you know. And unfortunately, I'm Irish, so they've chosen the wrong person to say that to. Yeah, because I'm stubborn by nature.
uh,
So what happens then? I get more committed to showing that it's universal. It's not something that's just not going to work here. And sometimes I've come a cropper. Sometimes that hasn't worked, but most of the time, with a bit more commitment, and maybe sort of a bit of a hard neck and more stubbornness, the thing actually just comes out in the end of the day, and we realize, yeah, it's just the Dharma just works everywhere.
But and have there been times when you've, I don't know, picked up on something that's in a way just emerged out of your engagement? No, not something that you've kind of thought, oh, we should be doing a bit of this, but noticing that there's something that's going on that you can just kind of plug into, that you don't need, that's emerged from people's engagement. I don't know.
Well, I think the last 5 minutes have been just me talking about that. I didn't know any of this beforehand. I was completely lost before I came to Brazil.
Yeah.
I was just a kind of a stuck European. So I can't say I'm not the same person that came, but I can definitely say that there have been some changes, and
So
that's what
how
one would expect. Yeah.
yeah, how is, how can you talk about it? That, I suppose maybe the question is like, what has moving to Brazil enabled in your own growth as a Dharma practitioner? What has
Yeah.
it
Well,
brought out in you, or what is it? Yeah, what possibilities have emerged?
well, I think I've got anybody who knows me knows that I've got a favorite word, which is no. And it's like it'll
Say
come out
no.
very, yeah,
Oh,
no, that's 2 letters, N-O, and it comes out very quickly. And the Brazilians, when they don't want to accept something, they don't say no, no, thank you. They say thank you. So that means no in Brazil. So they don't want to say no. So in between those two things, what I've learned is how to say, oh yeah, hold on a second, maybe there's something in this, which is actually a big thing for me.
yeah.
And actually, the Brazilians are fantastic. I've got loads of Brazilian friends who say, "Oh, Manjapriya, he's just said no. Give him 15 minutes."
Yeah.
So I've that's one thing.
So
I
that, yeah.
think, yeah, I think also empathy. I mean, just empathy. Just trying to leave my own sense of what I think is happening, and trying to tune into other people. That's been the main thing.
And what keeps you? I mean, it's quite a thing. I watched a little video earlier, and it said that you're 2,700 miles from your nearest Triratna center. So you're there. I think at the moment you're the only order member there, aren't you? So what keeps you? What keeps you motivated to keep going and to keep working in that way that you're, developing a sangha and living in Brazil?
Well, there's probably many things.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's a complex question. So there's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
I would say I love the Triratna. I love what Bhante has given us, and by and large, you know, Sangharakshita is the person who has made the biggest impact in my life. So I'm just happy to get on with that work. And the second thing is that, and probably the principal thing is I'm in a chapter. I go back to Europe once a year when there isn't a COVID, and I just keep my relationships alive. I look after my friendships as much as I can, especially new and old friendships. I mean, I'd be nothing if it wasn't for my chapter. So the chapter has been amazing, absolutely amazing. So a chapter is order members who meet once a week, and it's a kind of, it's just for us to get together and talk about our practice. So they would be the two things that come to mind.
Yeah, yeah. You said an interesting thing we were chatting the other day. You said moving country brought me right up close to the mystery of experience.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought was fascinating. Could you say something about that?
Well, Ratnaguna Ratnaguna came and gave a class on Zoom, because we've become all of a sudden, since March, we've become a Buddhist center, proper international Buddhist center. Before that, it was me basically and Vajragupta, who came every so often. Now we have, we've got meditations every morning, and sometimes in the afternoon, and we've got Vadika comes along, Nagapriya comes along, Osada comes along, we've had Arya Jaya, all sorts of people. So first of all, that has been absolutely amazing. So I'm basically on retreat. What was your question?
Moving country brought me right up close to the mystery of experience.
Oh yeah, well, Ratnaguna said that basically he feels that life is always there ready to teach him something. And that all he needs is to have wonder. And when he said that, he was like somebody had just explained something, very quickly that is part of my experience, is in a big part of my experience, I would say, just in the day-to-day life, that it hasn't happened, but I do have a sense, an overall sense, probably like anybody who's going for refuge, that there's something bigger than us. Like Bhante said, life is king, and it's this mystery that it's going to probably come through experience at some stage. I've just got to be receptive to it, and do my best to attract it. So, I think that's what I meant.
But it sounded like the fact that you were living somewhere different from where you come from kind of highlighted that, or kind of accentuated that, or made that more vivid.
Oh yeah, well, identity. In the end of the day, who are we? There was a poem that I could never source. It was an Irish poem which talked about the poet left his house in the middle of Ireland, and it was a wet day, and he went on a long walk, and when he came back to the house, he saw his footprints in the mud facing him, and he looked at the prints that he had made earlier on, and he thought, "Am I the same person? Am I the same person?" And we even said, like, you're in Ireland, you're from New Zealand, I'm in Brazil, I'm from Ireland. If you said to us, I don't know, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, that we would be here talking on Zoom in the middle of a pandemic situation, we'd tell the person to, go and scrub a duck. It's like that's actually the nature of things. So I think that's what I meant. I think moving culture, as you will know, is a way of really going into the mystery of identity and what actually is happening.
Wonderful. Thanks, Manjupriya. Now, I knew this would happen. I knew I'd think, I'm going to have to move on, because we've got two other people to talk to. So thanks so much for your insights and for sharing your experience so generously. Really, and a wonderful note just to finish on there, just in terms of looking at identity. So we're now going to hear a little bit from Chandraprabha. Now, Chandraprabha is also from Ireland, but she's from Northern Ireland. So she's from a town called Derry in Northern Ireland, and she was born in 1960. And in 1983, she moved to England. And she got involved in Triratna through a friendship with a work colleague, Bodhi Vangsa, or another order member, and she was ordained in 2002. And very fittingly, her name means moonlight, which is a lovely little tie-in with what you were talking about just a few moments ago, Manjupriya. So, and also, this is a festival of light. So at present, Chandraprabha is part of the team at Te Ratanaloka, and that's a retreat centre in Wales, also in the UK, which helps women to prepare for a life in the order. And one of the things that I've noticed about Chandraprabha over the years when I've been getting to know her, and a part of the reason I know her is we both go to something called the European Chairs Assembly, which is a big meeting of chairs of Buddhist centres and directors of Buddhist Triratna enterprises in Europe, and we get together twice a year in the normal run of things. And I've just noticed that she's very, very concerned to help people, and very, very concerned to get to know people and understand how people are the way they are and what she might be able to do to help them, both institutionally in terms of running the retreat center, but also just on a purely interpersonal friendship level. Very, very interested in people and very concerned to help them. It's one of the things I've noticed about her. So one of the things I just wanted to say is that just for those of you who aren't from this part of the world, is that I'm on the island of Ireland. But the other part of the northern part of the island of Ireland is actually part of the United Kingdom. So Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, which also consists of England and Scotland and Wales. So interestingly, with Chandraprabha, she's moved from Ireland to England, but she stayed in the UK. So it's kind of complex. And maybe I just wanted to ask you, Chandraprabha, just to begin with, what was the main difference you noticed moving from Northern Ireland to England in the early 1980s?
Yeah, thanks, Nyanadara. So I think one of the things I noticed was that probably like anyone who even moves to, let's say, from Scotland or Wales to England, there are big cultural differences. There are big cultural differences within the island of Ireland, and there are big cultural differences within the UK. So I suppose in a way I pitched up in England thinking in a way it would be just the same. And there were definitely things that were just quite different on a cultural level for me. So I don't know if other people from Ireland will resonate with this, but I definitely noticed myself haggling in shops about the price of things, which I very quickly found out was not a done thing in England. Mm-hmm. And I definitely noticed that I had a bit less, it's a bit embarrassing to say this, I had a bit less regard for the law of the land than a lot of the people around me. And that's something that has probably changed for the better. And I noticed that people were more into queuing in England than they were in Ireland. So I don't know if any of you have ever been at an airport in Ireland. There's a very small airport in Derry, and there's something that happens there if you're getting a flight that we call the Derry Scrum. So it's like where a scrum is where a lot of people push together. So there were definitely things at a very sort of basic cultural level that were quite different. But there were also things that were different, I think, at another level, which is that in the 1980s, well, Northern Ireland was a very divided and violent society. So there were quite a big differences between moving from a country that was a bit violent and dangerous to a country that was peaceful. And
will I just say a little bit about that, Chandraprabha? Yeah, so for those of you maybe who aren't aware, in the late 1960s, something called the Troubles started. So I was looking it up online, and from the 30-year period from the end of the 1960s until the end of or the culmination of a peace process in the 1990s, 3,500 people lost their lives in Northern Ireland. So it's quite, when you hear it like that, and particularly earlier on, there was a lot of death and devastation. So the conflict was between what's often called two different traditions. So there's the Protestant Unionist community and the Catholic Nationalist community. And I've been living here for 16 years, and it's a very complex history. So I remember you saying to me, Chandraprabha, a few days ago, that was the most significant difference in terms of the move that you made, which in terms of distance isn't that great, but in terms of the difference in the culture was huge. Maybe you could just say a little bit about what it was like, growing up as a young woman, a girl and a young woman in Derry and in the 60s and 70s and 80s.
Well, one of the things I was talking to people about recently is that I'm guessing that probably everyone who's listening to this has had some experience of the current pandemic. And in a way, I was thinking there's a bit of a parallel there, which is like something comes along which is unwelcome and dangerous. And you think it will be over quite quickly. And then it just goes on and on and on, and you gradually become used to a different way of life. So there's definitely something quite similar about that. And I think what it was like in a certain way growing up was that one needed to know very strongly what was a safe situation and what was not a safe situation. And there were a lot of ways of working that out. And I think I brought something of that very strongly with me when I moved. And in a way, I think I was quite unaware of that. So it's quite an interesting thing, this sort of like the kind of personal development side of moving to another culture is that there's quite a bit of unpicking of what is one's cultural background and what is one's own personal.
And how did you notice that kind of playing out in your own life? You know, in terms of your interactions with other people and friendships, particularly.
Yeah, I think to be really honest, for quite a long time, I didn't recognize that that's what was happening at all. In a way, my own conditioning from coming from a certain tradition was just totally invisible to me. I think that was just the way the world seemed to me, and it didn't feel like there was something I was doing in that. But I do remember a friend saying to me before I was ordained, and if she's watching this, she might remember, she said, "Oh, there's something about you. You're very friendly on the surface, but actually you keep yourself a bit separate below that." And I think as the years have gone on, I've just realized what a strong habit that is. So, you know, people who've been to Northern Ireland will know that there's a certain way in which people make a very friendly connection initially. A part of that is kind of working out what the safe situation is, but then there's a whole lot of things that one doesn't necessarily share. So I sort of realized quite recently I had a lot of, say, quite good friends when I was at university. I went to university in Belfast, but there were huge parts of our life that we didn't share with one another.
And that's quite a significant thing, isn't it? You know, to come, because I mean that's one of the things we do in Duratna, isn't it? Is we get together and we meet people and we get to know each other, and part of that means actually talking about our life and the things that have gone on in our life.
Yes.
And so how did you find that, you know, in that when you became more involved and more committed in our Sangha?
Well, I think it's an interesting thing. I think there are certain parts of myself I find it quite easy to share. And then there are certain topics that come up, one of which is exactly what we're talking about now, which feel much more risky. They're the sorts of things that I would never have spoken about really when I lived there, unless I was quite sure of my audience. And I think I've brought that with me, and I've definitely brought it with me into Triratna.
Maybe you could just spell out, like, when you say I'm not sure of my audience, what does that mean? Like, why would you be so cautious, so circumspect about knowing your audience before you begin to share certain things?
Goodness. Deep breath here. So I think that one of the things I've noticed, and perhaps I've noticed it maybe a bit more since I've been involved in Triratna, and I think there are probably reasons for that, is that I think that from my particular background, so I'm from a Protestant and Unionist tradition in Northern Ireland, is that people very often make assumptions about what I might be like because of what people who are from my background are like. And I think probably in a way Triratna might be the place where I've heard that more expressly said. So in a certain way, I think it is something about I'm just trying to think how to put this. There are certain situations where I can just feel myself automatically keeping my head below the parapet.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think that there is probably a good reason, in a certain way, that I've become more aware of that in Triratna, which is, I think that people in Triratna are probably a bit more interested in situations outside their own situation than most of the population. So I think there's a very kind of positive reason for that, is that it's not because people are more judgmental, it's just because people are actually more interested in other bits of the world, if you like.
And so you said there was another reason as well? I don't want to kind of press you, but
no, I think that's it.
Oh yeah. And so could you say, in a way, a little bit similar to what I asked Manju Priya, but making that move, do you have a sense of what that's enabled? I mean, do you feel like half of the Dharma's been accomplished, or is there something in that for you? And
well, I think that there's definitely quite a big. I can really resonate with that quote about leaving one's land half of the Dharma is accomplished, because I think it's hugely helpful in unpicking what is one's cultural conditioning and what is one's personal conditioning. And let me think what else I could say about that. I think it's a bit of an ongoing process for me personally. So there's certain personal conditioning, I think, that I have, which is around seeing the world as a difficult and dangerous place, seeing other people as potentially a threat. I mean, it feels a bit embarrassing to say that, but I think it's quite deeply woven in, possibly not. Sometimes I think it's at a bit of a sort of manoniyama level, a bit of an instinctive level.
Yeah.
And it's not that immediately goes away. It's quite interesting when one is out of those circumstances. So, of course, there was a huge freedom in moving away from a conflict situation. And I don't think it goes away quickly. But I think what happens is that something else grows up alongside it. So there's one's kind of instinctive conditioning, which has sometimes got quite strong feeling tone associated with it. And then there is one's dharmic values that kind of coexist with that. And they are often, I think those are just to do with deeper values, but in a funny way, they're not always as strongly felt. So there's something about allowing both those things to coexist.
Yeah.
That allows something to change over a long term, but I do suspect there are probably parts of that will never change that much.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Chandraprabha. I mean, I know you were nervous about talking about this, and I was a wee bit nervous myself, actually. So I'm just really grateful that you've been so generous with your personal experience and talking about something which is difficult and not easy to talk about, and with 192 people all over the world.
But the Dharma is all I can say.
Yeah.
Really big time.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Chandraprabha. And we're going to move on. I mean, maybe I'd love to talk to you more about that on some other occasion. But thank you very much. So we're now going to move over to Cambridge, not too far away from Colchester, and Sanganath. So Sanganath was born in 1982 in a place, or in a village that was part of it, near to a place called Kolhapur, which is near to Pune in India. He was born into a Buddhist family, and he was ordained in 2008, and his name means Sanganath, which means protector of the Sangha. And just say one thing about Sanganath. I was just chatting to a friend yesterday who was on a Karuna appeal. Sanganath works for Karuna and leads appeals, and he was just so appreciative of the friendship that you offered him as part of his appeal. So I think that's something that Sanganath is really, really well known for. So Sanganath, what struck me about your story was you haven't just moved once, you've moved several times. So you moved from a small village to the big city, to Pune in Maharashtra in India. So why did you make that move? Why did you make that shift?
Thanks, Nanadhara, and thanks everyone, happy International Sangha Day, and especially my brothers, sisters in India and all world really. Just want to Jai Bhim. Yeah. So yeah, as you said, Jnanadhara, I grew up in a small village of India, in southwest of India. In a way, by chance, really, although I was born in a Buddhist family, we say, from Dr. Ambedkar's community, I didn't have any clue about Buddhism, really. But I was lucky enough to make some connection with the Tri Ratna in my village. So some inspiring order members come to my village, started this Buddhist group, teaching meditation and Dhamma. But more importantly, I think Karuna's one of project actually came to my village, and the project called Ashwaghosh, teaching children songs and play and things like that, meditation and Buddha's story and so on. So I made a strong connection with this project. I loved it when I was a kid, going along to these activities. And through that project, I made a connection with Buddhism and Tri Ratna. But I never imagined I would go out my village, really. I even never imagined I would go outside India, But because of my strong connection with Tri Ratna and Buddhism, I grew up in a lot of friendship with people in Tri Ratna. And
was it your friends who led you to move to the big city?
That's right. Yeah. So I was involved with this project Ashwaghosh, and they said, why don't you come and work with us in Pune, in big city in metro in India? And straight away I said yes. But when I said yes, it was very difficult. It was very, very difficult to leave my village. I remember myself lot of fantasizing. I'm traveling to Pune and something happened very bad in Pune and going back to my village, trying to find reasons going back to my village. But anyway, initially I went to Pune because this older member, this Mitra, asked me, why don't you come and work with us? Yeah.
And then you lived there for a number of years, didn't you? And you did a degree, and then you decided to move to the UK, to England. So how did that come about? How did you?
Yeah, so I lived in Pune 8 years. And when I was living in Pune, I was in university. I made a strong connection with Tri Ratna again. I was in ordination process. And I was living in community. I was so inspired by getting ordination and Dr. Ambedkar and so on. In a way, I never thought I would come to England, but I made some connection with some Western Order members and some Indian Order members who lives in UK already. And a couple of friends suggested me, why don't you go to England and work with Windows Trading? As you know, Windows was a trading company who was very successful, and people from lots of countries, 25 countries, used to come and live there. So that really inspired me, going and working with Windows and getting ordained and learning about myself more and more and learning about new culture as well. So I came to UK in 2005.
And how was it? How was it entering into this completely different place? I remember you telling me that it was snowing when you arrived. Even that was kind of a major difference, just the environment. But how was it in a way in terms of the people that you met?
Yeah, in a way, when I was moving to UK, I had this open mind because, grow up in village, I always thought there is a big world beyond my village, So I had always this kind of open mind. Wherever I go, new places, it will be exciting for me. And especially coming to UK, I heard a lot about UK and a lot of good impression about UK. So when I came here, it was everything new for me, adventure really. Everything felt very, in a way, the word come to mind is just like a came into heaven, if you like.
Yeah.
That sort of kind of attitude, or that kind of experience I had. Yeah.
And how was it making friends, with the people? Because I mean, you were living in a community, you were working at Winter Australia, a lot of people around. I mean, I worked there myself, and there just so many different people. And how was it making connections and friends with the people that you were living and working with?
The first few years, honestly, it was very difficult because I wasn't able to speak any English. People know me very well. So when I came, that was very difficult. It was very difficult to express myself. By nature, I was very shy, lacking confidence. It was very difficult speaking in the group. So personal connection was very difficult, really. But people took interest in me, I think, when I was in UK. And I was lucky enough because I was surrounded by some Indian community in Windors.
Yeah.
And Windors was a place you can make friendship very easily, I think. So I would say it was very difficult to make friendship in the beginning. But when I look back 15 years, that's one of the things I'm really grateful about is my friendships has grown so much in UK. I have so many friends in UK, Indian, outside Indian, British, all of really. So that's something I feel very proud or grateful. But I would say it took me 15 years to make strong friendship with people, and I still, on the path of discovering and connecting more with friendship. Yeah, but it took me 15 years.
Sure. And what are some of the other challenges that you've encountered in your move from India to England?
Well, the first was definitely the language.
Yeah.
Because although I had a degree in India, but I couldn't speak any English. So when I came here, that was very, very difficult, speaking English and understand people. So definitely. I guess the biggest challenge was I grew up in India with very community around me, social life was very easy. But when I came here, that was very challenging. That wasn't much available here. So in a way, that social life, integrating with British culture was so difficult. Yeah, definitely. That was challenging.
I mean, and what about the kind of opportunities that it presented?
The opportunity.
Just making that change. Like, there's undoubtedly. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to move to a country where you don't know the language. But also, like, you're still there 15 years later. So, what's made you stay? What opportunities has it presented to you living in a different culture from the one that you came from?
Yeah. Well, the main thing is really is Triratna's connection, my connection with Triratna. And I would say, even if I see, if I reflect more deeply, I think it's Dhamma really. Because when I grew up in India, in a small village, I made strong connection with the Triratna, Buddhism, and something about with Dhamma, if you like. And that was always, that thread is always for me when I moved from my village to Pune from UK. And I think if I didn't have that thread of that kind of Dhamma or Triratna, I don't think I would, it would be difficult, I think, living in UK. So one thing I really pleased coming to UK because of my connection to Triratna, and more importantly, something about Buddhism and having connection with Dhamma, I think.
And what does it mean, the fact that you are where you are, and you've really, I mean, when I was talking to you, I thought you've been very successful, really. I mean, you've really made something of your life in the UK. Running the door knocking appeals for Karuna, and I'm just, what does that mean for the people where you come from your village and so on?
For my village, it's a big thing. I am in the UK because there's something about people's imagination has fired up only because I'm in UK. They start to think someone from our village can travel abroad.
Yeah.
and not just abroad, really. Also, somebody from Dr. Ambedkar's community, somebody, that community could also make connection with Buddhism in different country. And there's something about, I would say, really void of imagination for people in UK, in my village. Yeah. But when you say successful, I don't consider I'm successful. I mean, I struggle a lot as well. There are times I think one of the things very difficult living in different country, I think, is integration. And there are times I felt really disintegrated or lost or homesick, or and I have made some mistakes as well. But one thing I'm really pleased, if you like, is my connection with social change is stayed. Even I'm in UK through working with Karuna, through working with Windows, or being in part of the Tri Ratna community, which is very important, very close to my heart, really.
Yeah. Wonderful. It's so heartbreaking to have to keep cutting people off, but we need to move on. So thank you so much, Sanganath, for sharing. Just sharing. There's so much more we could have talked about. There's so much more that I would have liked to ask you about, and all three of you actually. So hopefully we'll get an opportunity on another occasion. I just wanted to thank you so much for being willing to share yourself online in this kind of way, and just some of your insights about what it's meant to be living and practicing in a culture different from the one that you came from. So thank you very much, Manju Priya and Chandraprabha and Sanganath. I also wanted to thank the International Council, the Future Dharma Fund, and the Buddha Center Online for organizing this online event. This is the first time. We've ever done this. We've ever had an online Sangha festival, and it's been given freely without any charge. And I know it probably looks really easy from your end, but there's an incredible amount of work that's going on behind the scenes to make this possible. And it's possible because of the generosity of Future Dharma Fund supporters. So some people have funded Future Dharma Fund, and Future Dharma Fund have taken it on to organise this day. And they also fund the International Council, which has also been part of the day. And Future Dharma Fund are making possible 30 other Dharma projects around the world. And what I want to do now is just invite our tech team just to play you a short video, and you'll recognize somebody on the video. It's Manju Priya. So I just wanted to just invite the tech team to play that video now.
Om Tare Tu Re Swaha. 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 Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Swaha. Om Tare Ture Swaha. Om Tare Ture Swaha. Om Tare Ture Swaha.
So yeah, so you've seen there, you've seen a little bit of the work that Madre Priya and others do in Brazil, and I know it makes a tremendous difference, the support that Madre Priya gets through Future Dharma, and that's just one example of a whole range of different projects that that Future Dharma Fund are funding around the Triratna world, just to bring what we've been talking about and doing today to more and more people around the world. So what we're hoping to do today is to raise 30,000 British pounds so that these things can happen and continue to happen. So if 250 people today, and there's 167 even on just this session, gave 120 pounds or £10 per month, then that would achieve that 30,000 pound target. And it's possible that we could even exceed that because I just heard that sometime today, one Dharmacharani gave £10,000 to this fundraise. So yes, so I'm not sure how far we've got into the fundraise. Maybe somebody can post it, but yeah, that's what we're asking. Yeah, so we're asking if you can give £120, or that's €135, or 230 New Zealand dollars, or the equivalent in euro. Oh, we've 106. People have given £16,757. There you go. That's the current total. So I just really ask you, if you know, just to give whatever you can, whatever you feel moved to give, whatever feels like what you want to give to this fund. So you can click on the link in the chat box, and you can also see you can also find that on the Future Dharma Fund website. So just wanted to ask you that just before we conclude, and just to say that you can find the full program of all the events that are happening today on the buddhacenter.com/light. And next we are going to be handing on the flame to Mexico for a reaffirmation puja. So that's going to be happening in about 2.5 hours time. But before that, we're going to have an opportunity to meet in breakout rooms. And I'd like to hand over to Amalavajra, who's going to tell us how that's going to work. So over to you, Amalavajra.